Here's the thing most women don't realize. Sometimes the best way to get a man's attention isn't by chasing harder or explaining yourself. It's by pulling back and acting like he's a stranger. Sounds harsh, maybe, but this is actually one of the most powerful moves you can make when he's stopped valuing you the way you deserve. When you act like someone who barely knows him, you're flipping the script. Suddenly, he's the one left wondering what happened, why you're distant, and what he's lost. That uncertainty, that's his worst punishment, because it forces him to step up. If he wants to keep you, in this talk, I'm going to show you exactly why acting like he's a stranger isn't cold or cruel. It's smart, strategic, and totally necessary if you want to take back your power in any relationship. When you're in a relationship, especially one where you feel like you're constantly giving more than you're getting, it's easy to get caught up in the emotional whirlwind. You find yourself reacting to his moods, chasing after his attention, and trying to fix things from your side. But here's the truth. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make isn't to push harder or explain yourself more. It's to create space by acting like he's a stranger. This isn't about playing games or being cold-hearted. It's about resetting the dynamic between you two and shifting the emotional energy in a way that forces him to notice what's happening and, more importantly, to step up. When you act like he's a stranger, you're essentially telling him, without words, that the way things have been going isn't acceptable. It's a boundary. You're stepping back from the constant emotional availability you've been offering and putting the ball back in his court. Because here's the thing, if a man has gotten comfortable with taking your time, your attention, and your emotional labor for granted, then pulling back like this is a wake-up call. Suddenly, you're no longer someone who's there on demand. Instead, you're this mysterious, distant figure who's no longer reacting to his moods or his behaviors. And that forces him to reassess not just how he's treating you, but how much he actually values what he's got. There's something incredibly powerful in creating this space. It's like when you meet someone new and you don't immediately reveal everything about yourself. You hold back a little, you keep some mystery. That natural tension makes people curious and interested. The same thing applies here. When you stop being emotionally available, you're not just punishing him. You're reminding him that you're not just anyone. You're someone who has standards, who expects respect and effort, and who will not settle for less. Acting like he's a stranger makes him work to earn your attention again, rather than assuming it's just going to be there. And here's the psychology behind it. People value what they have to work for. If he's been used to you chasing or reacting instantly, then you acting distant disrupts that pattern. It triggers his brain to think, wait, why isn't she responding like she used to? What's changed? That uncertainty is uncomfortable for him, but it's the exact discomfort that leads to growth. It forces him to step out of complacency and actually consider how he's behaving and what he wants from the relationship. This space you create also gives you something incredibly valuable: clarity. When you're no longer caught up in the constant back and forth, you get a chance to breathe, reflect, and decide what you truly want. Acting like he's a stranger isn't just about making him miss you. It's about giving yourself the emotional distance to see things clearly without being clouded by frustration or hurt. It's a moment where you reclaim your power, your emotional well-being, and your independence. It's important to understand that this move isn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It's not about being spiteful or trying to make him suffer. Instead, it's about protecting yourself and demanding the respect you deserve. When you act like he's a stranger, you're setting a standard that you won't be taken for granted. You're showing him that your time and attention are valuable, and he needs to earn them just like anyone else would. And because you're stepping back emotionally, you're also sending a strong message without having to say a word. Sometimes words get lost in the chaos of emotions, but behavior speaks louder. By shifting your energy from available and reactive to distant and calm, you're showing him the consequences of his actions or inactions in a way that's undeniable. Finally, acting like he's a stranger forces the relationship to change or it risks fading away. If he truly cares and values you, this reset is the push he needs to show up differently, to bring more effort, and to treat you with the respect you deserve. If he doesn't, then this space also protects you from continuing to invest in someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. Either way, it's a powerful tool that puts you back in control of your emotional life. One of the most common mistakes women make when they feel distant or disconnected from a man is to chase harder, texting more, calling more, trying to fix things by putting in extra effort. But here's the reality: when you chase a man, you're actually pushing him away. Men by nature respond to challenge and mystery. When something feels too easy or available, the excitement and desire begin to fade. That's why one of the most effective things you can do is to stop chasing and instead let him chase you. Letting him chase you doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It's about recognizing your own value and not giving him constant, easy access to your time and attention. When you pull back and make yourself less accessible, you trigger something deep in his psychology, the natural male instinct to pursue. Pursuit is not just about physical attraction, it's about feeling needed, wanted, and respected. When you chase after him, you're essentially handing over the power of the relationship, signaling that his interest or effort isn't necessary because you'll always be there. But when you step back and act like he's a stranger, like you're someone, he still has to work to get to know or reconnect with you, reignite the spark of pursuit. He begins to wonder why you're suddenly distant, why you're not responding the same way, and what changed. That curiosity combined with the natural drive to win a prize makes him want to chase harder, pay more attention, and invest more energy. It's important to understand that chasing doesn't just look like constant communication. It can also show up in how available you are emotionally. If you're always ready to talk, listen, or respond to his mood swings, he can slip into a comfortable pattern where he doesn't need to make an effort. But when you're less emotionally available, when you hold your boundaries, you encourage him to reflect on how much effort he's putting in. Suddenly, he has to prove that he's worthy of your time, your affection, and your emotional investment. Men tend to want to feel like the hero, the one who pursues and wins. When you chase, you rob him of that opportunity. Instead, by stepping back, you're giving him the chance to step into that role. And when a man feels like he's the one pursuing, it's deeply satisfying to his ego and builds attraction. It's not about playing hard to get for the sake of it, but about creating a balance where he shows up and makes an effort because he genuinely wants to, not because you're pushing him. This dynamic also protects your own emotional well-being. When you chase, you put yourself in a vulnerable place where you're waiting for him to respond or show up, which creates anxiety and frustration. But when you stop chasing, you reclaim your power. You're no longer dependent on his validation or attention to feel good about yourself. You're focused on your own life, your goals, and your happiness, and that makes you infinitely more attractive. Letting him chase you also helps you see his true level of interest. If he's genuinely into you, he will rise to the challenge and pursue. If he's not willing to put in that effort, it's a clear sign that he's not as invested as you are. And that clarity is invaluable because it saves you time and emotional energy from chasing someone who's not fully committed. There's also a beautiful element of timing here. Sometimes men don't realize what they have until it's not so easy anymore. By stepping back and acting like a stranger, you give him the chance to miss you, to remember what made him interested in the first place, and to decide if he wants to fight for you. And when he does, the connection is deeper, the attraction is stronger, and the relationship becomes more balanced. Ultimately, letting him chase you is about honoring yourself and your needs. It's about refusing to be second best or a fallback option. When you make yourself less available, you're sending a powerful message. You're someone worth pursuing, worth waiting for, and worth putting effort into. And that shift alone can change the entire course of your relationship. One of the most important things to understand in any relationship is that your value is not negotiable. This might sound simple, but it's something so many women struggle with because they get caught up in trying to please, explain, or justify themselves. When you act like he's a stranger, you're reinforcing a powerful truth. You are a person with boundaries, standards, and self-respect, and you will not allow anyone to diminish your worth or take you for granted. Often, women make the mistake of adjusting themselves to fit what they think a man wants, sacrificing parts of their identity or settling for less than they deserve. But here's the reality. No matter how much you try to bend, change, or accommodate, if a man doesn't recognize your inherent value, it's not going to work. Your value comes from who you are, your uniqueness, your passions, your intelligence, and your heart. And when you truly believe that, you stop trying to prove yourself constantly. Instead, you let your presence speak volumes. When you act like he's a stranger, it's a way of communicating that your time, your attention, and your affection are precious commodities. You're not giving him unlimited access anymore. This shift tells him, without having to spell it out, that if he wants to be part of your life, he needs to earn it, just like anyone new entering your world. And this is exactly the kind of energy that commands respect. People, especially men, respond to confidence and clear boundaries because it shows strength and self-awareness. Your value being non-negotiable also means you refuse to tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or lack of effort. You don't settle for crumbs or excuses. You know that you deserve honesty, kindness, and a partner who shows up fully. Acting like he's a stranger reminds both of you that you're not someone to be taken for granted or assumed to be always available. It's a reset button that forces him to reconsider how he's been treating you and what he really wants from this connection. This mindset changes the entire power dynamic. When you expect to be valued and treated well, you're no longer chasing validation or trying to convince him of your worth. Instead, you radiate a quiet confidence that naturally attracts the right kind of attention. Men are drawn to women who hold themselves with dignity and who don't tolerate anything less than what they deserve. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect, and it's incredibly magnetic. It's also important to remember that your value isn't something you earn through effort or approval from others, it's inherent. So too, your worth doesn't decrease or increase based on their actions. When you act like he's a stranger, you're living from that truth. You're showing up as someone who knows her worth and refuses to let anyone rewrite it for them. This approach also creates clarity for both of you. If he truly values you, he will recognize and honor the standards you set. He will step up and meet you where you are. If he doesn't, it becomes clear that he isn't the right person to invest your time and energy in. Acting like he's a stranger filters out those who don't align with your value and draws in those who appreciate and respect it. One of the biggest benefits of holding your value non-negotiable is the emotional freedom it brings. When you stop compromising yourself to keep someone around, you stop feeling anxious, desperate, or insecure. Instead, you create space for genuine connection based on mutual respect and admiration. You're not trying to force anything, you're simply letting the right energy flow towards you. In fact, this kind of energy is often what sparks true attraction and deepens intimacy. When a man feels that you have clear boundaries and that you're not afraid to walk away, it challenges him to be better and to invest more authentically. It's not about power plays or games. It's about being real with yourself and him. So, acting like he's a stranger is a way to reclaim your power and remind both of you that your value is fixed and undeniable. It's a stance of strength that keeps you from settling for less and opens the door for the kind of relationship you truly deserve. When you live this truth, everything shifts, not only how he sees you, but how you see yourself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship isn't to say more, it's to say less, or even nothing at all. Silence, when used intentionally, speaks louder than words ever could. When you act like he's a stranger and pull back emotionally, your silence becomes a message that he can't ignore. It shows him without saying a thing that something is wrong, that you're disappointed or hurt, and that he's the one who needs to step up if he wants to fix it. Words can often get tangled up in emotions. When you try to explain, justify, or argue, it can feel like you're exhausting yourself trying to get him to understand. But people don't always listen the way we want them to, especially when they're defensive or unaware of their own mistakes. That's where silence comes in. It's a form of communication that creates space for reflection. When you stop responding to his attempts to provoke, guilt trip, or manipulate you, you're cutting through the noise and making it clear that you won't engage in unhealthy patterns anymore. The power of silence is in its mystery and its ability to create uncertainty. When a man is used to getting immediate reactions from you, whether it's anger, frustration, or reassurance, suddenly being met with calm or no response is disarming. It makes him pause because he no longer has control over the situation in the way he's accustomed to. That pause creates space for him to reflect on what he's done or said, and what it means for your connection. Silence also protects your energy. When you engage in constant back and forth arguments or emotional explanations, you're draining yourself. By choosing silence, you're setting a boundary that says, I won't continue to expend my emotional energy on this unless you're willing to show respect and understanding. It's a way of honoring yourself and refusing to be pulled into cycles that don't serve your well-being. Importantly, silence isn't about punishing him with coldness or playing games. It's about holding space for a healthier dynamic to emerge. When you act like he's a stranger, your silence becomes a signal that you're no longer available on his terms. Instead, you're asking for a new kind of respect, one that requires effort and genuine communication from his side. This kind of silence can be incredibly uncomfortable for him, especially if he's used to taking your presence and emotional availability for granted. But discomfort is often the catalyst for change. When you create this quiet tension, it forces him to decide if he wants to step up and meet you where you are, or if he's going to keep taking you for granted. Either way, it's a moment of truth. Another thing silence does is it invites curiosity. Humans are naturally wired to seek connection and understanding. When you withdraw and become less predictable, it sparks questions in his mind. Why is she different? Why isn't she responding like usual? What's going on? This curiosity can motivate him to reach out in a more thoughtful, sincere way if he's truly invested. Silence also helps you regain control of your emotional narrative. Instead of reacting to every word or action, you choose when and how to engage. This shift in control is empowering because it means you're not being tossed around by the tides of his behavior. You're anchored in your own calmness, which naturally commands respect and attention. The trick is to use silence deliberately, not as a way to withhold affection forever or to punish indefinitely. It's a tool to reset the relationship's emotional tone and encourage more meaningful, respectful interaction. When you're ready to communicate again, it's from a place of strength, not desperation. That's when conversations become clearer, deeper, and more productive. Ultimately, silence is a form of self-respect. It shows that you value your emotional health and won't settle for chaos or disrespect. Acting like he's a stranger through your silence signals that the old patterns are over and the relationship needs to evolve, or it risks losing you altogether. This is often the wake-up call a man needs to realize your worth and step up in a way he hasn't before. Confidence is one of the most magnetic qualities a woman can have, especially in relationships. When you act like he's a stranger, what you're really doing is showing confidence over desperation, and that difference is everything. Desperation is a feeling of neediness and insecurity, and it pushes people away. Confidence, on the other hand, is grounded in self-respect and assurance, and it pulls people in. When you stop reacting to him like he's the center of your world and instead behave with calm confidence, you change the entire dynamic between you. Desperation often shows up as clinginess, over-texting, or rushing to respond to every message. It comes from a place of fear, fear of losing him, fear of being alone, or fear that you're not enough. But the truth is, when you operate from desperation, you send a signal that your happiness depends on him, and that's a lot of pressure for anyone to carry. It creates imbalance, and men, like anyone else, want to be with someone who is whole and secure in themselves, not someone who needs constant reassurance. When you act indifferent or distant, like he's a stranger, you're showing that you're emotionally independent. This kind of confidence is incredibly attractive because it means you're not desperate for his validation. You have your own life, your own goals, and your own happiness that doesn't rely on his attention. You're not waiting around anxiously for him to make up his mind. Instead, you're living fully and letting him come to you. Confidence also changes the energy you give off. When you're confident, you're calm, composed, and in control of your emotions. You don't react impulsively to his moods or actions because you understand your worth and your boundaries. This calmness naturally draws him in because it's refreshing compared to the usual emotional roller coaster he might be used to. It also makes him curious. He wants to know who this woman is that isn't chasing or pleading, but simply standing strong and steady. Men are wired to be attracted to strength and independence, not neediness. Acting like he's a stranger lets him see that you're not dependent on him for your happiness or sense of self. Instead, you're someone who commands respect and inspires admiration. This doesn't mean you're cold or uncaring. It means you're emotionally mature and balanced, and that makes you far more appealing in the long run. Another important aspect of confidence is that it protects you from being treated poorly. When you show that you're confident and in control, you're less likely to tolerate disrespect, neglect, or inconsistency. You're setting a standard for how you want to be treated, and you're prepared to walk away if those standards aren't met. This boundary is crucial because it keeps you from getting caught in unhealthy cycles, where you're constantly hoping he'll change or prove himself. Confidence also empowers you to be selective. When you're acting like he's a stranger, you're essentially saying, "I'm not going to settle. I know what I want and what I deserve." This mindset means you won't settle for less than a partner who values and respects you. You won't accept half-hearted effort or confusing mixed signals because you believe in your worth and your happiness. The beauty of confidence is that it's self-sustaining. The more you live from a place of confidence, the more it grows. It becomes a positive feedback loop. Confidence attracts respect. Respect reinforces confidence, and that dynamic creates healthier, more fulfilling relationships. You're no longer chasing approval or attention. Instead, you're inviting genuine connection based on mutual admiration and effort. When you act like he's a stranger, you create distance, yes, but more importantly, you create space for confidence to shine through. This space is where your true power lies. You're not playing games or being manipulative. You're simply showing up as your best self, someone who knows her worth and won't settle for less. In the end, confidence over desperation is the secret ingredient to transforming your relationships. It changes the way he sees you, the way he treats you, and most importantly, the way you see yourself. When you embrace that confidence and act like he's a stranger, you're setting the stage for a connection that's built on respect, desire, and genuine attraction. When you act like he's a stranger, you're doing more than just creating distance, you're making him work for connection. This is one of the most powerful things you can do because it completely changes the energy in the relationship. Instead of giving him immediate access to your emotions, your time, and your attention, you're asking him to prove that he's willing to invest real effort if he wants to keep you close. And this challenge can be uncomfortable for him, but it's also exactly what shakes him out of complacency and forces him to see your true value. Most men are wired to respond to effort and intention. When things come too easily, it's easy for them to take the relationship for granted. But when you hold back and act like he's a stranger, you're saying, "I'm not here to be your convenience. If you want me, you have to show up." This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about respecting yourself enough to demand that kind of effort. You're setting a standard that your presence and affection are earned, not given freely without thought. Making him work for connection also helps prevent the relationship from becoming one-sided. Too often, women find themselves doing all the emotional heavy lifting, initiating conversations, making plans, or smoothing things over after conflicts. But when you act like he's a stranger, you create a natural balance. He can no longer rely on you to keep things afloat without putting in his fair share. Instead, he has to step up, communicate, and demonstrate his interest in concrete ways. This approach also helps reveal the true nature of his intentions. If he's genuinely interested and invested, he will make the effort to bridge that gap and connect with you. He'll reach out more thoughtfully, be more present, and show up in ways that matter. But if he's not willing to work for it, then acting like a stranger serves as a filter, helping you see clearly whether he's worth your time or if he's just comfortable taking what you offer without reciprocating. Making him work for connection also increases his appreciation for you. When something is easily available, it's often undervalued. But when he has to put in effort, he starts to see the depth of what you bring to his life. That effort builds desire and respect because it's linked to the investment he makes. The connection becomes something he's actively involved in creating, not something he passively receives. From your side, making him work for connection is empowering. It puts you in control of your emotional availability and your boundaries. Instead of being at the mercy of his actions or moods, you decide how and when you engage. This control protects your emotional well-being because you're not giving yourself away freely to someone who doesn't meet your standards. You're choosing to invest your energy wisely in a way that honors your worth. There's also a psychological element to this dynamic. Humans are naturally motivated by challenge and reward. When you act like a stranger, you introduce a challenge. He has to put in effort to gain your trust, your affection, your time. This challenge activates his desire to achieve and to win you over. It taps into the primal aspects of attraction where effort equals value. He feels the thrill of pursuit and the satisfaction of earning something meaningful. This doesn't mean you should be distant or cold indefinitely. The idea is to create a healthy rhythm where effort is genuine and mutual. When he works for connection, it leads to deeper, more meaningful interactions because they are earned, not expected. That effort builds a foundation of respect and desire that keeps the relationship vibrant and alive. By acting like he's a stranger, you're setting a boundary that says, "I'm not just anyone, I'm someone worth effort." And when he responds to that boundary, It signals that he values you enough to invest in the relationship. This shift transforms how he approaches you and how the relationship evolves from something casual or taken for granted to something intentional and valued. Ultimately, making him work for connection isn't about being difficult or unattainable. It's about honoring yourself and demanding the respect and effort that any healthy relationship deserves. It's the kind of move that keeps you from settling, protects your heart, and invites a partner who truly appreciates and cherishes you. At the end of the day, acting like he's a stranger isn't about pushing him away. It's about showing up for yourself with confidence, clarity, and self-respect. It's about creating the space for him to see your true value and decide if he's willing to rise to the challenge of earning your time, your attention, and your love. When you hold your boundaries, embrace your worth, and refuse to chase, you transform the dynamic entirely. You shift from being someone he takes for granted to someone he truly desires. And that shift, that's where real power, real connection, and real love begin. So remember, the best thing you can do is not to beg for attention, but to live your life fully, confidently, and on your terms, because the right man will always be willing to meet you there.